Now moving on to hard aspect combinations between Mars and Saturn. Mars-Saturn in hard aspect is one of the most challenging combinations that we have within traditional astrology, because in traditional astrology both Mars and Saturn are considered to be malefic planets, with Saturn being the greater malefic and Mars being the lesser malefic. Traditionally speaking, a malefic is a planet that is a causer of evil, or that carries a baseline of malevolence within its nature. Therefore, hard aspects between Mars and Saturn tend to be rather challenging. Mars is representing an unstoppable force, and Saturn represents an immovable obstacle. Therefore, when we have the combination of Mars and Saturn, we have an unstoppable force faced with an immovable obstacle, and therefore the only thing arising out of that combination is frustration. The combination of Mars and Saturn in hard aspect is the combination of frustration. It's the combination of failed efforts. It's the combination of exerting our greatest powers possible and still finding ourselves met with a dead end. And it's the combination of investing our all into something and finding that the return on our investment was far less than the energy and the time that we invested in that thing to begin with. When we have the hard aspect of Mars and Saturn, it can oftentimes feel as if our efforts are being thwarted by forces much greater than ourselves. And it doesn't matter what we've done or how we've done it, it still seems as if everything that we've done comes back to us with far less satisfaction than the energy that we initially invested in it. Very often, when a person is having Mars-Saturn in hard aspect within their natal charts, they oftentimes find themselves fluctuating between periods of extraordinary forcefulness and periods of a deep lack of energy. And very often when they have periods of extraordinary energy at their disposal, they find themselves faced with, once again, immovable obstacles that causes them to be frustrated and disappointed within themselves. And in those moments of frustration and disappointment, where they don't want to do anything anymore within the world around them, those are oftentimes the periods when the universe opens up and is willing to accept their efforts. So it oftentimes feels for a person with Mars-Saturn as if they are energetically active at the wrong moment, and as if they are energetically passive at the wrong moment. And as a result of that, they always feel as if they're missing out on greater opportunities within their lives. Now, because both Mars and Saturn are malefic planets, when these planets are in a hard aspect relationship, they mutually afflict each other, which is not normally the case. Normally, when a planet is in hard aspect with another planet, it's the slower moving planet that afflicts the faster moving planet, and not necessarily the faster moving planet that afflicts the slower moving planet. However, because both Mars and Saturn are thought to be evil planets within traditional astrology, when they're in hard aspect with each other, they mutually afflict each other, which means Mars burns Saturn and Saturn freezes Mars, which once again sets this combination up to be one of our more challenging combinations within traditional astrology. Within the context of both Uranian astrology and cosmobiology, the Mars-Saturn midpoint is thought of as the death axis. And the reason for that is because both of these planets represent major sources of affliction to our body's natural vitality, and therefore when we have these two planets together, they can oftentimes represent a deep state of destruction and even death. And within the context of Uranian astrology and cosmobiology, when we investigate somebody's Mars-Saturn midpoint and we find a planet occupying that person's Mars-Saturn midpoint, that planet can often point towards the systems within that person's body that are more than likely going to be most afflicted within this lifetime. While the combination of Mars and Saturn may seem like it's an altogether very challenging one, I think one of the positive things about this combination is that it teaches us the importance of waiting. and it teaches us the importance of patience. And very often in our youth, when we have this combination of Mars and Saturn in hard aspect, it can feel as if we're missing out on life, or as if everybody else around us have the ability to take advantage of life in ways that we don't. However, as we grow older with the combination of Mars and Saturn in hard aspect, we learn to appreciate some of the ways in which we've been denied opportunities within our lives, because it teaches us the value of waiting for our moment to come. And therefore, as a result of that, the combination of Mars and Saturn in hard aspect can be one of our greatest teachers as far as patience is concerned. And I think there's also something very special about this combination, because Saturn is the god of karma, and Saturn is also the god of the lessons that we learn within this lifetime. And when Mars and Saturn are in hard aspect, the lessons that we're learning within this lifetime have to do with how we use our vital force and how we invest our vital force within this lifetime. Because the hard aspect of Mars and Saturn makes us realize that we don't have infinite possibilities within life, and we also don't have an infinite amount of time with which to use the possibilities that we do have. Therefore, Mars-Saturn is a very vital combination in terms of helping us become very clear about what our specific purpose is within this lifetime, how we're meant to use our allotment of universal life force energy within this lifetime, and how we're meant to serve the world around us with that energy in the greatest way possible that's available to us. Because when we have Mars and Saturn in hard aspect combination, we don't have the luxury of using our vital power with as much reckless abandon as others around us, because we realize that we have a specific allotment of power, and that power is meant to serve us throughout our entire time here on this earth. So while people who have Mars and Saturn in hard aspect may not really know how to deal with that in their youth, when these people grow older, they oftentimes find themselves having a sense of stability and practicality and determination, but also of purposefulness within their actions that causes others around them to look up to them as sources of inspiration within their lives.